Welcome to Talent Matters, the podcast where talent, skills and grit take centre stage. I'm your host, Donal O'Donoghue, and this is episode 19. The podcast is sponsored by Sanderson, talent solutions that transform businesses globally, and Finero, the multi-award-winning tax experts who support financial success for contractors, freelancers and solopreneurs. In this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by clinical hypnotherapist and best-selling author, Fiona Brennan. Hi, Fiona.
Hi, Donal. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Delighted to see you. So, as we always do, we like to start off in the early days to figure out how you got onto the path that you're on. So, would you tell us a little bit about your life growing up?
Of my life growing up, my goodness, Donal. I suppose basically the business that I have now is the positive habit. And when you ask me that, like the first thing I think of is my mother when I think of the word positive. She is relentlessly positive. And I think I was very influenced by her in the sense that, you know, whatever was going on, and of course in anyone's life, you know, there's going to be challenges. When I was 10, my father basically got ill and has sort of had a heart condition since then. And my mother had to really become the main breadwinner, if you like. And she was and still is an icon to me in terms of her resilience, her grit and her positive attitude. You know, she really did sort of get out there and do all she could and provided for us all, really. Now my dad did still, but was it not able to do it in the same way. So essentially my path to where I am is one that goes quite deep. I've always been fascinated by people and what makes them tick, if you like. I was one of those, and I think I still am, one of those people who will be on a train and kind of staring, you know, just like intrigued as to the makeup of what's going on. What's the story with people? What's happening there? So I basically studied acting I studied acting and worked in theatre for 10 years. And that was like where I was able to really explore characters, motivation. It is also that ability to make sense of yourself in some way through the characters, exploring the psychological motivations behind them, and then kind of in some way also exploring yourself. However, it's a very talk about rejection, you know, it's you know, you kind of wake up in the morning almost to be rejected. And I don't think I could really keep going with that. But ironically, I'm quite proud of it. I left it when it was really at its most successful. And I decided that I wanted to do something that had more solutions, if you like, for people, that I was able to actually really make an impact and make a change and a transformation. Because a lot of the characters I played were struggling, suffering psychologically, going through really difficult times. And drama being drama, Donal, like it always ended in tragedy. So that was quite hard, you know, to sort of, there was never this kind of sense of flourishing or moving forward. It was quite often these kitchen sink dramas of depressing, you know, think EastEnders, this kind of thing. And I wanted something that actually made a difference and an impact. So I completely changed tack in terms of studying clinical hypnotherapy and positive psychology. And essentially, like, I do feel that the universe kind of works with you when you are in your groove. And like, my career has just gone from strength to strength ever since I started to do this work. You know, it's flowed. It's like doors open, people come. And I think it's because I am where I need to be and I'm doing what I'm good at. Not that I was a terrible actress.
But isn't it interesting as well how something like acting or theatre or performance, it really develops your communication skills, and so much of what you do now is about bringing that message to life.
Oh, 100%. Like in terms of the content videos or public speaking, I do a lot of corporate talks. I do, absolutely. And interviews like this, going on radio, podcasts. Yeah, that skill is there. That sort of training, if you like, that confidence is within me because I'm so used to it. It's just normal to be in front of people, and there is that sense of ease and experience that comes with that. But it's also a sort of a sense of understanding, audiences, if you like, and knowing what will resonate and what doesn't. And I think a lot of that comes from my literally years now at this stage. It's nearly 13 years of listening to people on a one-to-one basis.
In your practice?
In my practice, yeah.
That's in Blackrock?
Yeah, well, it's online at the moment, but yes, I work from Blackrock. And what happens is, like, you learn so much. Like, there would be no books, there'd be no podcasts, there'd be no talks, there'd be no nothing, I don't feel personally, without my clinical experience. Because it's my clients who I learn from. I get to see, like I was saying earlier, like I love, to sort of look and gaze at people and wonder. Well, I don't have to wonder anymore. I've got this amazing insight now where I get in to that space where it's private, where people are vulnerable and they trust me. And it's such an honor because my faith in humanity is so high. It's so high. I see the good in people, everyone. Like, there's a story. Actually, I was years ago, I went to the Pendulum Summit in New York, and I was kind of on a little bit of a mission, right? And I wanted to get a really strong endorsement for my first book, The Positive Habit. And I was actually, again, the universe kind of, looking after me in a big auditorium, hundreds and hundreds of people there. And Jack Canfield, who you may know, his work, Chicken Soup for the Soul and the Success Principles. And he was on stage and he needed a volunteer, right? And of course, my hand shot up, front row, Fiona Brennan, here I am. And out of all those people, he selected me to come up on stage. So I went up on stage and, he was doing these exercises. I kind of knew what he was doing with me and I was working really well with him. And it was like an energy thing where you have your hand out and he's asking you, think of this, think of that and see what happens to your energy. And he goes, now, Fiona, I want you to think of somebody that you don't like. I thought, oh God, I can't do this, right? And I know he wants me to, because I know he's a plan here. I said, I'm really sorry, Jack. I said, I can't think of anyone I don't like. And he was like, wow, he said, you have a good heart. And I was like, thank you, Jack. So that's the reason that I'm able to say that. I don't think I would have said that 5 or 10 years previously. The reason I could say it was because I get that inside track into people.
What kind of challenges or issues do people typically come to you with to try to resolve through clinical hypnotherapy?
Well, I suppose hypnotherapy is one of the tools that I use. I have trained in lifestyle medicine, positive psychology, so I'd be looking at it very holistically. Yeah, okay. Absolutely. I think that you've got to be really practical and you've got to look at the psychological components of what's going on. So essentially, really people come to me, they might come under the guise that they want to somehow improve something in their lives, like a lifestyle habit. Maybe it's their diet, their sleep, something like that. But within a very short period of time, it's actually the realization that there's more going on here. And what is it that's behind that behavior? We need to explore and to help to sort of free and liberate that person from. And often what's going on is really a sense of self-worth and value, and the realization that they are good enough. The most common, repetitive, negative belief that people have, and especially in the Irish psyche, is I am not good enough. And that can manifest and show itself in so many different ways. It can be I'm not good enough to get up in the morning and go out for a run. It can be I'm not good enough to put myself forward for a promotion or, to deliver a really good pitch. A lot of people come to me actually when they're worried about their performance at work. How are they coming across, their communication skills, their presentation skills? So really it's like I find, taking the emphasis off what they feel needs to be fixed and actually exploring it without any judgment and a whole lot of compassion is where you get progress. It's not a quick fix. And that's really something that, unfortunately, when people think of hypnotherapy, they go, oh, great, I'll do one session with Fiona and I'll be walking on air.
I'll be grand.
Yeah. And that's one of my biggest challenges, is helping people to be patient with themselves and to be compassionate towards themselves. That's a lifelong journey and skill that I continue to practice. And it's really based in mindfulness. It's based in the awareness that you're not a problem that needs to be fixed. People see themselves quite often as something that needs to be fixed, or I can't do this. There's something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong. It's about being human. It's about understanding we all have issues and flaws and difficulties and challenges and doubts about ourselves. And how can you learn to actually go towards the parts of yourself that you find most difficult? The part that gets anxious, the part that gets irritable. Those parts need our love. They need our attention. Just like within a family, if you have a child or someone you love that is struggling, the sort of desire to fix them, right, is actually the very thing that curbs their potential to progress. Like, what we want and what we need as human beings is to feel accepted and to feel loved as we are, not how we think that society, our family, the workplace, the world thinks we should be. And that's where you see incredible creativity, you see incredible courage, you see incredible compassion for oneself, but also for others, for colleagues, for, that ability to not take things personally. Like, that's what a skill. If you think about it, Donal, in the workplace in particular, like when people have emotional intelligence, like the sky is the limit.
Yeah. And isn't it interesting as well how the context of external pressures, whether stuff that's going on in family life or stuff that's going on in the workplace, can create that pressure cooker where somebody might have been doing fine for a period of time, but then suddenly, there's a downturn in the economy, or there's a recession, or there's some external forces that just create an environment where people feel just under more pressure and finding it harder to manage their stress and how they see themselves.
Absolutely, Don. It's a very good point, because you can be sailing along and think everything is, I've got this. And then something like you say, those really strong external circumstances change, and a person can feel like their whole world has just been turned upside down. And that's where, it's really an opportunity to actually grow from that experience. We talk about PTSD, but there is also PTSG, which is post-traumatic stress growth. I don't know if you've heard that before.
I haven't. I like it.
Yeah, it's rooted in that whole positive psychology movement, where you look at what is right here more than what is wrong. Very solution orientated. And what are the greatest learnings from this? So you can kind of go two ways when something really challenging happens. You can either go further down or you can go further up. And essentially, obviously, we want to help people to go further up and to actually take that experience and realize, just how strong they are. We underestimate our strength.
We really do. And actually, that's really interesting. And that has been a recurring theme in many of the guests that we've talked to about how the growth really happens and the learnings really happen during the losses, whether if it's sport or if it's business or whatever somebody's area is. The times when that you find the toughest and the times that you really have to dig deep to have the courage to go at it again, or whether, to get back into competition or get back into the workplace. That's when the growth happens more so than on the good days.
Absolutely. Yes. Because it's when we're at our lowest, we need the most self-compassion. And often that's when we deprive ourselves of it most. Because what we're seeing externally is not validating us. You didn't get the job, there's that illness in the family, grief, whatever challenge that is, that's when we tend to go hard on ourselves. You know, that's when we tend to neglect ourselves. And it's really then that we need that extra dose of love and support, if you like.
Tell me a little bit about what motivated you to write the first book.
Oh my God. Well, I just have to finish that. I did get the endorsement for Jack Canfield.
Oh, sorry.
The Positive Habit is my first book. And I
Yeah.
have to say it's still going strong. It's 5 years later. It's helped thousands and thousands of people all across the world. So I'm very proud of it in terms of my first baby book, if you like. What motivated me to write that was really wanting to share what I was doing clinically on that one-to-one level and having something that I could offer people that obviously there's only one of me. I've got a huge, it can be a very, very, very long waiting list. So I wanted to have something where I could say, well, look, this is what I'm doing. You know, it's not exactly the same as being with me, but it's as good as I can get it to help reach more people. And I think I've been successful in that. And essentially, I love writing. You know, I am actually a writer as much as anything else. Like I have my weekly Substack that goes out to thousands of people also. And that's, you know, I really look forward to it. It's not a chore. It's something that actually I find I love to express myself through that. And my father is a poet. And, you know, I think that writing is within me as well, as much as all of these other things. It's a way of being creative.
How much time would you put into it on a weekly basis, would you say?
Well, in my Substack.
Yeah, generally
Or
writing, whether the Substack or whether you're in a book project.
Well, if I'm writing a book, my goodness, it's a huge undertaking. Especially my last book, I have to be honest. You know, people were saying, is it your first? Like, no, my third. It's like the eyes go up almost like, oh my God, why do I do this to myself? But essentially, I think it was the topic. It was a new learning for me. So anytime we're out of our comfort zone, we're going to feel it. So I did a lot of research into sleep. So this is my third book, Sleep Well. So when I was writing that, I kind of went in a little bit naively, told the publishers it'd be no problem. Yeah, I could have that in a few months. Yeah, absolutely. Because I've done this before. This is my third book. Yeah, no problem. And discovered that I was actually in for a lot more than I had bargained for in terms of the research, essentially, and getting it into a way that I could make it palatable and appealing to the reader. Again, I'm proud of that. I think I have managed to do that. I know I've managed to do that with the feedback that's coming in from it so far. So it depends. Like if I'm not writing a book, which I'm not at the moment, probably why I have more energy and time to do wonderful things like this. I would be writing I'd probably spend at least anywhere between 1 to 2 hours a week writing. And essentially my Substack would be where I put a lot of that effort into.
Very good. I'd love to talk a little bit about sleep because this is one of the reasons that you and I connected because and I know you gave out to me for my self-limiting beliefs when I talked about sleep, but I told you, I said, I used to be a great sleeper. And I told you the story about many years ago when the house was broken into and a car was stolen and I slept through the whole thing and kind of came down the next morning and went, something's wrong here. I'm now a very light sleeper and I put a lot of it down to since having kids, you know, you always kind of feel that you've got an ear open to hear, you know, if somebody needs to get up in the night or is sick or something like that. And then I think when you think about the external forces and it's like we seem to live in a more pressurized, more anxiety, more anxious kind of environment, a lot of the worry tends to manifest in at nighttime in sleep. And then you've got devices and Kindles and all that kind of stuff that'll kind of stop you going back to sleep sometimes. So huge topic. Why do you think sleep is such a prevalent topic for discussion at the minute?
Because it's highlighting all of those things. Essentially, the biggest block to a good night's sleep is the overactive mind. Now, and again, I share all of these lifestyle habits based on the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine in the book. There's so much that can be done. That's why I just love this subject because it's very empowering on a practical level, what can be done. But essentially, if that psychological component isn't there, you're going to keep on hitting walls, if you like. And the way that the metaphor I like to use is essentially, if you think of your what you're processing throughout the day, right? In terms of emotions, feelings, thoughts, experiences, all of the different things that we are exposed to every day, all of the information that you're soaking in, whether it's on social media, the news, etc. All of these things, as you say, being bombarded, like a bombardment on us. It's a bit like your kitchen. If you imagine your kitchen, right, and you can see the counters are all perfectly, clean and everything's in its place. It kind of feels good, doesn't it? You're like, you go into the kitchen and it's nice. So let's imagine you have your breakfast and you just don't clear up. Let's imagine you have a cup of coffee and you just don't clear up. Then you have your lunch. And again, maybe you have a few people over, so it's getting pretty messy in there. You don't clear up. It's dinner time. You don't clear up. It's nighttime. You have another cup of tea, whatever it might be. The kitchen is now chaotic, right? It doesn't feel good, does it?
No.
That's what people are doing when they go to sleep at night. They are leaving everything building up during the day. You get into bed at night. You turn off the lights and it's like a tsunami wave. Everything that you have not processed or given your attention to can come flooding at you. So essentially a good night's sleep, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart for you, Donal, and I wasn't giving out to you. I was simply highlighting with compassion, is that a good night's sleep starts the minute you open your eyes. That's not how most people look at it. Most people, and again, you're not alone, and I would have been the same, especially before I really went into the research with this, is that, it's like, I'm going to go to sleep now. And it's like a racing car that's going, I don't know how many miles an hour, and just stops. The engine's still running. The mind is still going. How in the name of are you going to actually go into the state that you need to, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, where you rest and digest, where everything is calm, where everything is at peace, and literally, like, sleep comes to you. You don't chase sleep. That's a big mindset shift. And also moving the attention away from that effort, it's innate. Just like our heart is beating now, just like we're breathing, we're not trying to breathe. We're not hoping our heart breathes. It is happening. Sleep is the same, but it needs the conditions for that to happen. It needs peace. It needs quiet. It needs to know that you've been listening throughout the day to what's going on, that you've cleared the space. You've done your emotional, if you like, dishes, your mental dishes throughout the day. And therefore the space is actually primed and ready for deep rest. And rest is a very important word as well, because you shift this sense of, I have to go to sleep, right? Oh my God, what time is it?
That's the worst bit, isn't it? And particularly when you wake up and you look and you're thinking, it's 3 a.m, I need to get to sleep. It's 4 a.m, I need to get to sleep. I need to be up in 2 hours. It's 5:30. And then 5:45, you're falling asleep, and then the alarm goes off at 6. You're like, I didn't get any rest.
Oh, Donal, I'm gonna give out to you now. How do you know it's that time, right? The single most important thing is, do not look at a watch, a clock, a phone, nothing. You don't need to know what time it is. Why would you need to know what time it is? The time is sleep time, rest time. That's all it is. It's really simple. You go into what Eckhart Tolle calls clock time. And clock time is essentially now, right? So now it's time to rest. That's it. And that shift from rest to effort to sleep, it's this time, that time. That is your conscious mind. That's coming in. And all that does is create cortisol. And what does cortisol do? It creates alertness. And what does alertness do? Wake you up. So you, like, literally, if you have a clock set, let it do its job. You don't need to know. You've got that. It can do it. It's like delegating, it's doing the job for you. Now it's rest. And that shift, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, if you can shift your mind from, I have to get to sleep, to, I'm resting now. That's very powerful, because sleep will come when there's no pressure, when there's no expectation. And how we sleep is often how we live. What kind of pressure or effort are we putting on ourselves that we don't need to? And how we can just allow, in that sense, things to flow. Things will come to you when you, like I said earlier, when you're in your groove, when you're in the right place, things are going to come. When you're in bed, you are in the right place for rest, and sleep will come.
How did it come up as a topic? Was it from personal insight or more from hearing from, people that you were seeing in, that you were patients or
Yeah. Clients, I suppose I would call them
clients?
more like, yeah.
I was looking for that
Yeah,
word.
I know it's tricky because I'm definitely not a doctor, but I do see clients. Yeah. Essentially, Donal, it was feedback. So when you get positive feedback, you want to listen to it. And what I've been told over the years from so many people is, thank you, Fiona, I'm sleeping so much better. And that was from my hypnotherapy audios that I would give to people, not necessarily who had sleep issues, but might have had low self-esteem, anxiety, stress in their lives. And it's almost like that indirect approach, right? And that's why this book I feel like it was a book that had to be written. It was like it was there just waiting to sort of be born, if you like. And essentially it's bringing this concept of what I call the sleep well formula. So I now understand what I was doing for people, but didn't actually realize it at the time. So it's quite a creative process, but kind of unraveling it in some sense and getting an understanding of what it is. So in the book, I share the sleep well formula. And it's a lot of what we've touched on in terms of the sense of taking that pressure off. But it's also quite scientific in the sense of what's actually going on within the body and brain that allows sleep to arise. And essentially, we need to, I can share the formula if you like. So it is to breathe. And when we say breathe, I mean like really breathe deep. So we're belly breathing. And that creates a sense of safety. So what is sleep? It's about surrender. It's about letting go. So when you feel safe and you're breathing deeply, that is the message to your subconscious and to your body that it is safe to let go. So breathe. Imagine is where we're now getting the mind off the mind. So the overactive mind, like I said earlier, is simply the biggest block. But what you want to do is actually, like, even if you can imagine yourself in a beautiful spot, maybe it's somewhere you've been on holiday, maybe it's your back garden, it's a lovely summer's evening, you can feel the grass under your feet, you can look up at the sky, you can see the trees and the light on the leaves. And all of a sudden, right, your whole system is just going, oh, this is lovely. We've got what we need. We've got relaxation. So we use our imagination in a positive way to actually help us as opposed to hinder us. Most people get into bed and start to use their imagination to think about worst possible situations, what's coming up tomorrow, what I should do, what I didn't do, what I must do. And again, that just creates the very thing we don't want, which is that cortisol.
And do most people, I presume you're not a fan of TVs in the bedroom and stuff like that?
Oh, I love them, Donal. Big, huge screen. Yeah, get it. The bigger the screen and the more...
What do most people do? Because, okay, I'm going to admit it. We've got a TV in the bedroom. There are Kindles. There are phones.
Short of getting into that bedroom, I don't know what to do, which might not be a good idea.
It's not a good idea?
Not a good idea.
Okay.
At all. In fairness, it's all the things that are creating difficulties for your circadian clock, because it's about light. Light is a huge part of our ability to go to sleep. And you want as much light. This light now is great at this time of day. Put me in here at 10 o'clock at night and it's going to really impact my sleep. So you're talking about is maximizing the light as soon as you can after rising, and then minimizing it as you get closer and closer to bedtime.
And what do you think of, the likes of the sleep apps and stuff like that for kind of almost guided meditations, or those soft voices to kind of lull people off to sleep? What's the one? I can't think of the name, but the app that everybody
Calm.
Yeah, Calm.
Yeah.
Are you a fan?
Well, I am, because that's what I do in terms of my audios that accompany the book. Yes, that's how it kind of came about, if you like, through my own sleep meditation. I've got a great voice myself.
And it all goes back to the acting skills and all that, and the ability to communicate.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny how the skills that you acquire over your life can actually feed into even a very different career direction?
It really is. And I think that's an important thing for people, is that, whatever you're doing, and if you want to change tack, like, you can bring those skills. It's not like, oh God, it's starting from scratch. I don't think we're ever starting from scratch. We've always bringing what we have with us. But essentially, just to go back to that, it's how you use them, right? So it was kind of a paradox in terms of, I definitely don't recommend phones in the bedroom and all of this, and, you know, definitely no flat screens or iPads or Kindles, or, you know, you want to get away from the screens, which is kind of ironic when I'm saying with the book, there's 8 accompanying audios that I would like you to listen to. So the analogy again that I have for this is that if you think about a hammer, right? A hammer is something that you can actually do some good with. You could hang up some lovely pictures, you can fix something, or you can create a lot of damage. You can go around and you could just destroy everything around you with a hammer. Our phones are like that, right? They are the same thing. They are a hammer. They can be used for good, or they can be used for our for bad, if you like. And it's how we use them. We need to be the master, not the servant. We need to have really good, I don't like the word discipline, because it just sounds like it's too much hard work. We need to be devoted to ourselves and know what's good for us, and to actually implement that. And, you know, being able to say, okay, it's a phone, it's a device for many different things, but it's also an audio player, and I can actually use it as such. You know, we could go out and get a whole separate device, but we don't need to. We actually don't need to do that, because...
But it's discipline, isn't it?
It's, again, I think it's more about self-love and self-respect. Like, if you think about it really clearly with children, right? You've mentioned children. So imagine going into the bedroom of a child and they're just getting sleepy, and you wake them up and you say, come here, wait till I tell you. Go on that iPad there and have a quick scroll, right? I'm just going to turn on the TV for you for a minute. I know you love this. Going to turn this on for a minute. Oh, and by the way, do you know what? I think that little Johnny did his homework better than you, right? Just saying. Did you do your homework? You did. And do you think you're okay for school tomorrow? That child is going to be wired to the moon, right? So we can see it really clearly with our children. But we need to do that for ourselves, because that's what we're doing to ourselves. We're going, I'm just going to put this on. I know, just look, quick scroll. And, you know, by the way, do you think you're really prepared for that meeting tomorrow? I bet you know, X, Y, and Z is more prepared than you. Or, you know, this is what people do. And it's a case of realizing that it's really unkind to yourself, and you don't need to do that.
I definitely find the idea of the guided meditations, you know, when you talked about, you know, for example, visualizing, you know, a really serene, a very nice place, and the leaves, and like, if you don't have a very good imagination, which I don't think I would for that type of thing, I definitely find the guided meditation or something like that a very soothing way. Either that or reading. Are you a fan of reading before?
I am. I read every night before. It's part of my unwind routine, if you like. So it's like, I have this in the book. It's called the 60-minute hour of bliss. So it's like something you look forward to. And I love reading. So that would be something. It's important not to read something too jarring or something too challenging. You want to read something like a good novel or something that you enjoy. So Donal, I am definitely going to get these audios over to you, because I think they would help you, right? So the fact that you're open to it and you like the guided meditation.
I'm definitely open to it.
Yeah.
I was using podcasts, because obviously I like podcasts.
Yes.
But I had this really weird moment where I was listening to a podcast that I won't mention. Very nice person who's actually been a guest on this podcast. I was listening to their podcast and it was helping me to go off to sleep. But then the way it kind of recommends another podcast, it recommended Talent Matters, and I woke up to Welcome to Talent Matters, and I freaked myself out. I was like, what is going on? So, but I'd definitely be open to
you want to listen to something that's actually guiding you to where you need to go.
Yeah.
You know, podcasts are great for during the day, but they're not material to help you to go to sleep. And I know a lot of people do use them, but unfortunately, it's just not going to create the depth and the level of sleep that you are capable of. And that's how we have to look at sleep. How effective is it? You know, like I
like that in the title for the book. There's like the subtitle about getting to sleep, staying asleep. 'Cause exactly. So my thing is, I have no problem at probably 9 o'clock in the evening when we're sitting down to watch some TV on the couch, nodding off. But then by the time it's the staying asleep piece, isn't it? Sometimes.
Yeah, and that seems like it's almost like a good thing. Oh, I can go to sleep easily on the couch. But all that tells me, and any sleep expert will tell you, that means you're exhausted. Sorry to break it to you, Donal. And I mean this with lots of love and compassion. It means that you're
I'm feeling the love and compassion. Thanks, Fiona. And Leanne, if you're listening, I'm exhausted.
Yeah, it means you're really tired, right?
Yeah.
And so your sleep drive is high at a time where you probably don't want it to be high because you want to just unwind and enjoy the TV or whatever. So you there's a lot of tweaking here. There's a lot of tweaking, but honestly, the difference it can make in terms of how effective it can be. And I've gone through my own journey. I'm no, perfect, person at all in any way, but I've noticed how my own sleep is the quality of it. Like I always thought I was a good sleeper, but I didn't actually know what a good sleeper was until I wrote this book.
What was you mentioned that there was a lot of research to be done. What was the most interesting thing that you learned that you didn't know as part of that research?
Wow, God, that's a good question. What comes to mind, and it's actually not even that necessarily sort of connected to how to get to sleep or stay asleep. What it's connected to is dreams. And I didn't realize how important, if you like, our REM sleep is. I had heard, right, that it's really important for emotional regulation, but I didn't realize just how essential it is in terms of the quality of that REM. We hear a lot about deep sleep, which is like the dishwasher for the brain, if you like. But REM is that emotional regulation and how we can learn so much about ourselves through our dreams. This is something I've always been quite a vivid dreamer, and essentially, sort of taking note of what our dreams are saying to us is very powerful in terms of how we can make decisions and help ourselves to sort of process things. Again, it's like the kitchen's been cleared for us, if you like, and how essential it is to prioritize that. Because if we don't, that's where a lot of anxiety and stress starts to build, because we haven't had that process happen throughout the night. We haven't had that access to what is an amazing gift from nature, is our ability to regulate our emotions. Like that REM is just absolutely paramount for it. And even when, I think it's really reassuring when we have unsettling dreams, that they may be unsettling, but it's nothing to worry about, if you like. There's no point worrying about it, because essentially it is nature's free therapy. It is actually helping you. And when you just kind of surrender to that, you go, okay, that's lovely. And, you can kind of let your subconscious do its work for you rather than intervening and trying to get in the way of that.
Do you put much meaning into people's recollection of their dreams, or do you recommend that people try to, because sometimes it's really hard to remember what you dreamt about unless you write it down straight away or something.
Yeah.
But do you put a lot, some people put a lot of value on and trying to take a meaning from a dream?
I think there's a lot of kind of pop psychology around this, and we have to be careful with it, right? In terms of dream recall, the science shows that what the most effective way to do is actually, before you even, if you want to write it down, that's really good. But before you even do that, what you want to do as soon as you wake up, and quite often we're in a lighter stage of sleep in that earlier, the last 4 hours of sleep. So you are going to be having more REM. So as soon as you wake, you want to stay with your eyes closed and just sort of replay the dream in your mind. And that will actually really reinforce it. Writing it down is the next great step, but do that first. And then also, in terms of interpreting them, right? I think what is most helpful is not necessarily like all of these kind of standard things. Like if you lose your teeth, you're going to, you're worried about your self-esteem. There's lots of all of these kind of ideas. I think that essentially the best expert of your dreams to interpret them is yourself. So I do this myself. I will write it. I will kind of replay it. Not always, but when it's very vivid, I'll replay it and then I'll write it down. And essentially it's like, I had a great teacher once called Rick Hansen. He's a neuropsychologist, very well known internationally. And he said essentially that when we start to listen to the subconscious, it will speak to us. So it's you actually interpreting that. What does that mean, right? So maybe there's a concern over a loved one, a son, a daughter, And the dream is actually telling you something. It's telling you maybe you need to step back. Maybe it's telling you that everything's actually fine. And when you do this, those insights come to you. We have so much intuition in ourselves. We often look to others for this expertise. But what I do with my clients is I'll always say, the answer is within you. Let me guide you. Let me help you. But you'll be amazed at what's actually going on inside yourself when there's space to listen, when there's that connection to oneself. Then you will get the insights. But when we're too busy, we don't get those.
That's it. And again, it comes back to the context, doesn't it, of the world that we're living in, and the pace of everything seems to be increasing. And you kind of touched on there a little bit about the relationship between your conscious mind and the subconscious. What are you seeing in that area? Do you see that people are somewhat disconnected?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a case of, like, if you think about it, whether it's your relationship to sleep, it's a relationship to yourself. And how do we have healthy relationships? Well, we need to spend time with that person, don't we? We need to kind of show that person that we care and that we love them and that we're there for them. So we need to do this for ourselves. If we're not spending time with ourselves in an undistracted way, then there's going to be a disconnect. There's going to be a sense of, well, I don't really know if I can trust you or feel safe with you because I haven't seen you in years. And you never contact me, and you're always, busy when I want to talk to you, or, so a relationship is going to suffer. So one of the things that I actually recommend, and I do myself, and it's really powerful, and I really recommend you do this, Donal, if you can, which you can, is take yourself off, right? Just you. Go into nature. And that's it. No agenda, no plan, no phone. You and nature. It's incredibly healing, and you will be amazed what insights come to you. It's like you could go into the woods, you go wherever you like to be, whether it's mountains, sea, woods, and spending that time literally without any agenda. It's the most powerful thing we can do with ourselves, but also with relationships externally. If there's any issue with someone you love, like a teenager or, anything that's going on, take them off for the day into a beautiful place without any agenda, without sense, I need to fix this, we need to talk about this, we need to, no agenda.
And no phone. It's really interesting
no phone.
that you say that.
Yeah.
Do you think that we're addicted to phones at this stage?
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. And you see it, like it's difficult to see, sometimes you'll sit in a coffee shop and you'll see a parent and child sitting there, and the child is looking to engage, and the parent's face is in their phone. Or, if you think about what you just said there, take yourself off into nature. And one of the first things that came to my mind was actually doing a story of the seascape, or, because we tend to do that now.
Yeah.
So that's really
and there is a place for
it?
that. There's a place that we love to share. And that's what I actually love about social media, is that we do love to share as human beings. There's nothing wrong with that. But it needs to be balanced, right? We need to go in so we can come out, if you like. Our first port of call has to be that internal world. And then we're in that strong place to share externally. Yeah.
It sounds like the change in direction in your career has gone really well for you. And it sounds like you've really found purpose in what you're doing. What do you think is driving the prevalence and the interest in this kind of holistic wellness that, it's almost becoming an industry, wellness, well-being.
It is an industry. Yeah, absolutely. And it's thriving, to be honest. It really is. Like, in terms of, I run retreats, and, the wellness retreats are actually at their highest ever in terms of demand.
And even when you think about it, a couple of weeks ago, we had Wellfest, and there's, hundreds of thousands of people in a festival environment working out and working on themselves. And it's it didn't exist years ago. Where has it all come from, and what's driving it?
Well, I think education. I think it's a positive side, again, of social media, in terms of, that sense of realization that there's more to us than sort of survival. that we can thrive, and I suppose personally speaking, like I have been at that other end of the scale where I am not thriving, where I'm not flourishing at all. And, I had a lot of anxiety in my youth. Although when I say that, it makes me feel so old. Like, and I like to call, we're in our middle youth, Donal, right?
I'm happy with
Well,
that.
can we go with that? Middle youth.
happy
It's
with
good,
that,
isn't it?
yeah.
Rather than middle age, middle youth. And basically, I know what that's like. I know how debilitating that is. I know how hard that can make life, and it's not necessarily the external that changes. It's the internal that changes. And so I practice like literally not everything, but almost everything that I preach in terms of it's not about perfection. So that's why I say almost everything. But I know that this works on a personal and also obviously a professional level. But having that experience of knowing what it's like to genuinely be at ease and peace with yourself is so liberating. There's a part of all of us, I think. It's like Donal O'Donoghue, the wonderful Irish mystic and poet. He said there's a place within all of us that is unwounded, right? That there is a place in us that is solid and strong and without any of the conditioning or baggage or experiences that we've been through, that it's just pure and clean. And it's like, that's the place that we can access. So I think that to answer your question, like, why is this growing? I think it's growing because there is an awakening in many senses, a sense of there has to be more to this than just getting through it. And that when we give ourselves permission to experience it, it becomes not just something, on an intellectual level. It becomes embodied. You feel it throughout your whole system,
Yeah, and I think the mindfulness piece is also driven a little bit by, if you look at the societal changes, you go back a couple of generations and the prevalence of suffering in the church and survival, tougher economic times. Certainly my parents' generation was just get on with it and, get the kids raised, keep working, just get on with it. Whereas now I think this generation or our generation, we realize that you get one circuit around the clock and you've got to make the most of it. And I think it's a really good thing, the increased, I suppose, awareness or desire to live well and to do it well. And that piece of balance, I think, is great. And I think your books are a fantastic addition to that. For people that want to find them, just tell us about your website and where people can find you and find information about your content, your courses, the books.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Donal. Yeah, so the best place to go to is first of all the website, thepositivehabit.com. I'm on Instagram, and also my Substack, I think is really where you'll get the most sort of sense of my personal insights that I also then will link to professional. So I kind of make that bridge between the two. So
and for anyone that isn't familiar with Substack, what's that?
Yeah, it's a really strong platform of writers who share generally weekly. It's a newsletter that has, and I've had this since 2016 now going out. It wasn't always on Substack. We moved to Substack. It used to be a MailChimp newsletter. And maybe people don't know what I'm talking about there either. But these are ways of basically emailing a lot of people. And Substack is it's a really strong platform that you can sign up for. It's currently free. You sign up and it just goes out every Monday morning. So the idea is that you start your week off, in that positive mindset, and that there's something for you to hold on to, if you like. There's an insight there that can help you throughout the week.
Super. Tell us a little bit about your plans, short and medium term plans. What are you looking forward to in the next while?
Oh, Donal, well, I tell you what, I'm going to Crete. I'm basically looking at dividing my time a little bit more between Ireland and Crete. So summers are going to be on Crete. We've just bought a house. I'm running wellness retreats over there. And also, I suppose it's always about finding ways to reach and help as many people as I can. I've no plans to write a book just yet, because I'm kind of, it's a bit like when you've had a baby and someone says, are you having another one? You're like, oh God, please don't ask me that. Not yet. Not there yet. So essentially, yeah, I'm, sort of growing my speaking side of the business in terms of doing more and more of that, which I really love. There's a huge demand for talks on sleep in particular. So that's where I'm at. And in terms of this, it sounds like when you say, oh, we're going to Crete for 3 months, it sounds like you're a millionaire. I'm not a millionaire. Not yet anyway, Donal. But I do feel that, again, this comes back to not limiting ourselves and realizing what we can do, in terms of the choices we make and how we can sort of orchestrate things that really suit us in terms of the lifestyle. So I love it there in terms of, I've got swimming every day, I've got yoga, I've got, I'm living the way that I really want to share it with others. And I think that's very important.
That is a wonderful thing. And I think what you said there about developing the speaking side of what you're doing is really, really important. And I know that a lot of people that listen to this podcast work in human resources and work in recruitment and HR, and actually where it's that holistic view where employers are actually thinking about if our people are sleeping well and they're rested, they're productive rather than exhausted. I'm very productive, but just a little bit tired as well. But it is interesting. So I think that's a really valuable area for you to develop as well. So that's fantastic. I just want to say thank you very much for coming in for a brilliant chat. And I'm looking forward to implementing lots of your ideas and removing lots of devices and flat screens and Kindles and implementing lots of that stuff. So thank you very much, Fiona.
Thank you, Donal. I've really, really enjoyed this chat. I really have. So thanks for having me.
Super. And if you've enjoyed the podcast, you can subscribe to our YouTube and follow our Instagram. It's @talentmatters_podcast. Thanks again to our sponsors, Sanderson and Finero, and we'll see you next time.